Okay, round of applause for Gary. Like a stand-up comedian or something. Right, over to you. Thank you very much. This will be a bit lighter.
Cool. I'm Gary Martin. I'm a freelance software developer. I think the buzzword is probably technologist at the moment. Digital's frowned upon, so technologist it is. I'm going to talk to you about LightLog. It's a project that was funded by New Media Scotland and Project Ginsberg from the Scottish Government. It's a project to try to solve or help solve some mental health issues, particularly to do with seasonal affective disorder and winter blues. So it's about tracking light, monitoring light. Is it too quiet? Can it be turned up a bit?
I think this is just for the live stream.
Right. Cool.
I think you can turn it up on the thingy.
It's okay. I can do this.
Are you sure?
Why not?
Okay.
Okay, so let's. Okay, so what is LightLog? It continuously records the ambient light that you're exposed to. It's a wearable. It was designed to be low cost, so it's a very low cost bill of materials.
Don't mind me. I'm going to try and turn up the mic a bit.
Okay. It's a tangible device. So tangible is it's a digital device where it's a physical device that you hold that can display information which is related to the digital data that's inside the device. It's physical computing. So it's a small mobile processor, nothing too sophisticated. There we go.
Is that better?
That's much better. Cool. And most importantly for me, it was pitched as an open source and an open hardware project. So all of the source code, the firmware, the bill of materials, the circuit board designs, everything is all up on GitHub and can be downloaded and used under standard open source licenses. Right, it's going to be a bit small here. So very briefly, who is it for? So particularly seasonal affective disorder sufferers. There's about 2 million people in the UK who are affected by seasonal affective disorder, and across Europe, or across Northern Europe, there's about 12 million people who are affected as seasonal affective disorder sufferers. If you're above 30 degrees latitude or below 30 degrees latitude south on the hemisphere, that's where you start to see a prevalence of seasonal affective disorder. So it's only where you get these seasonal changes, winter to summer. We're also aiming at people with certain types of light sensitivity. So there's certain drugs that you take which can make you very sensitive to sunlight. And there's also medical conditions where you have to avoid certain amounts of sunlight. We're also aiming that this can be for people with just general health and well-being goals. Things like estimating the amount of vitamin D you might be getting from light exposure. People who are interested in life logging or quantified self, and shift workers. If you work shifts, it's very difficult to get the right amount of light unless you are supplementing the light you're getting in some way. So I think for shift workers who are trying to keep on top of their health, the amount of light you get is very important. And also, the project's drifted, this final one, quite a lot. It's to do with light research. So there's not many accessible products that don't cost a lot of money to actually monitor large groups of people and how much light they're exposed to. So currently LightLog is being used in Eindhoven Technology University. There's over 101 deployed there that are currently being used in various research projects. Oh, and yes, hours of daylight. If you're not sure where we are, yeah, so we're there at the moment. So that is, if I remember correctly, it's 17.5 hours of daylight we currently get. And then in 6 months' time, we will be down to 6 hours, 50 minutes of daylight. So that's a huge swing. Admittedly, there's not that many major cities. So Iceland, Reykjavik, that's going to be a bit worse. But up here in Scotland, that is actually quite a notable amount of difference summer to winter that we get. Okay, so why would you want to log light? So the idea is by tracking light, you can actually allow people to monitor their behavior. So how much light you get obviously depends on, do you go outdoors? Do you work in a dark office? Can you go out for lunch? Can you get up earlier in the morning and read a book in the window? There's lots of little things you can do to try to increase the amount of light you get each day. So the idea is by tracking light, people can actually see, well, I'm not getting enough, or I'm getting too much, or if I eat lunch outdoors, that's enough to get me up to my daily dosage. Something that comes out from a lot of the research is it's tied very much into various sleep disorders. So it's not just a type of mood disorder, it's also the amount of sleep that you get. So by managing the amount of light you get, you can also modulate your sleep pattern. And I'll show you a bit more of that later. And that also can affect for people suffering from things like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. They have particularly disrupted sleep patterns. So anything you can do to try to improve that is good. As the usual, improving energy levels and alertness, and that's not kind of a new age saying. That's the studies show that bright light, among other things like massage, exercise, eating nice food, these things all produce a serotonin boost, and serotonin makes you snappier, more awake, more with it. So these things do actually sort of perk you up a bit. Vitamin D, it's the amount of sunlight you get. Vitamin D is produced by your skin. So if you have sunlight exposure on your skin, that's where you produce vitamin D. For seasonal affective disorder, you actually need light entering your eyes. It doesn't matter whether you have it on your skin or not. It's worth noting that vitamin D, you need UV as part of that light to create vitamin D. So you don't want too much of it. And also, that's not the kind of light you want going into your eyes, because UV is bad for your eyes. So there's an interesting little sort of dance that you need to do there. And also, logging light, it's a manageable amount of data. So if you think about it, you're just tracking, in light logs case, it's red, green, blue, and clear data. So you've basically got a stream. Every 10 seconds, it's taking a sample. And then once a minute, it logs the average of those samples. And you have a nice data stream with all of the light color profiles that change over time. It also has, I like to think, a minimal impact on privacy. Because it's such a simple data set, you're not recording photos, you're not logging personal thoughts. You limit a lot of the risks of storing data which could potentially be very personal. There is interesting patterns in there, but I think compared to some of the data you can track, this is fairly benign. Right, we're getting to some images in a minute, it's not all text. So how does it help? So again, easy, it's quite easy to record light, and there's very little interaction needed. You just wear the device and it's just constantly logging. The light logs currently will run for about 4 to 5 months on one battery charge, so you just put it on each day. I've currently got it set up so between 1 to 2 weeks you do a download of the data. If you forget, it's a rolling history log, so you would lose a little bit of data, but ideally you just log that data once a week and you get all of your profile. You can do nice visualizations. Hopefully you'll see some of those a little bit later. And then the idea is to use the interface on the device to promote a little bit of goal keeping. So the device tracks how much light you're exposed to, so it can tell you whether you've actually reached your goal. And if I hold it for 3 seconds, it'll blink horribly and probably tell you that, okay, so there's 2 flashing there, I think. So if you have a full daily dose, then they will all be flashing, and it's basically each one of those is 20% of your daily goal. So I was writing my notes here, so I didn't make it out today. That's my excuse. So yeah, the other thing that's interesting when you're tracking light, you want minimal light pollution at night. So 8 lux of light is enough to disturb your sleep pattern. So in the evenings, if you can avoid light before you go, 40 minutes or so before you go to bed, that's going to really help. Again, you'll see there's a diagram a little later which will show you that laptops are about 18 lux of light even when they're dim. So a laptop with a dim screen is still bright enough to disrupt your melatonin at night. Okay, let me skip on, he says. So yeah, so this all kind of kicked off about 3 years ago now it is. So it was in space. It was one of these 48-hour hacks with Project Ginsberg and New Media Scotland, and they were looking for people to pitch well-being apps, I think was probably what they expected. And then I came along with a bunch of electronics and some sweets, which were really useful. Cadbury's Roses, if anybody's listening. I needed the wrappers. That was for the 48-hour hack weekend. That's the only way I could sample color. So I basically used the cellophane of the colored wrappers and used them over light-sensitive resistors so that they filtered for the different color. Did some testing in the hack lab. You might even remember that, Al. And then basically just over that 48 hours, I was able to log some data, demonstrate it, recorded stuff. Didn't have much memory, but these are the kind of profiles you get for the red, green, and blue channels. After that, I went away and did some research. So this has been updated since, so there's a few products here which weren't available. There were some nice sort of hacky projects from students and researchers, but nothing really that was out there and available. So there's this product called the Dimister and the Dasimeter, and that's a US light research institute. Very nice devices, very small, very well produced, a little bit difficult to interface with, but unfortunately not available unless you're a medical institution wanting to study your patients. So again, very good systems, but just not available. About 6 months after I started, Sunsprite did an Indiegogo. Well, Good Lucks did an Indiegogo. They did really successful. So they have that this middle item. What's really nice about theirs, it's solar powered and Bluetooth, so it's completely wireless, and it logs UV and white light, which is good. And since then, we've also had things like the June, which is just designed for UV monitoring, and also the L'Oreal patch. I think Simon mentioned that once before. It's a color-changing patch currently. They do say there's an RFID tag version, which you don't have to scan with the camera. So currently, you have to point your camera at the device, and it looks at the pattern to see how it's faded in the sunlight. So they're getting there. I think that's coming for Android. That's the next product. And so this is kind of like my workflow. So the first thing I had to do is go and read a lot of papers, and you just end up with lots and lots of research papers. And so I have a process where I basically text mine them. And this is a self-organizing map based on all the research papers that I piled together to just try to get an idea of what's related, what are the big subjects. As I said, so this is quite a high level one, so this is only 250 items. There's one where you can't read any of the text at all, which is like about 1,000 items. And the main thing that comes out of that is the circadian rhythm. If you disrupt the circadian rhythm, you do cause ill health. So it's really bad if you're not on a standard daylight cycle. You can be offset, but as long as you're consistently offset, if you're doing shift work where your patterns constantly change, that's really bad for your health. I mean, it's linked to all kinds of things, cancers, depressions, lots of stuff. There's lots of data for that, so that really is a problem. The other thing which is quite nice is the research shows, so this graph is just showing melatonin from volunteers. The volunteers were given light therapy, so that's about 40 minutes in front of one of these bright lights. And what the researchers found is you can actually shift your sleep cycle, your actual physical sleep cycle, you can shift it 3 hours back or 2 hours forward, depending when you give them this light therapy. So if you have jet lag, you can actually use this to try to shift by +2 hours or -3 hours, depending which way you go. So if you have the bright light in the evening, where the melatonin is down at that low peak, at the dip, the valley, a bright peak there will actually pull your sleep back. So it will basically keep you awake for longer. If you have it early in the morning, you'll actually push that forward. So you'll want to sleep earlier in the day, so your bedtime will come forward. So you can actually move your sleep cycle if you get out of sync. This is a quick a visual to try to show how much lux, so lux is the amount of light that you receive. You have lumens, which is the amount that's transmitted, lux, which is the amount that's absorbed at a surface. You can see, so direct sunlight is massive. So 32,000 lux to 130,000 lux. That's way more than you would need for a standard dose of light therapy. And if you look, so we have light therapies, that little circle over there. So that's 2,500 to 10,000 lux. If you're only getting 2,500 lux, you need 2 hours of that. If you're getting 10,000 lux or more, then you only need half an hour of that. So ideally, you want to be out in indirect sunlight or indirect sunlight. And as I said, if you get there, you only need about half an hour of that to reach your daily goal. And down here, you can see a dim laptop screen is down at 18 lux, and that's above the threshold for disrupting your melatonin cycle. The sensor's got the device has got 4 sensors on it. We've got a short wave, medium wave, and a long wave, so which just match the red, green, and blue for the human eye. There's a third one, the fourth one, which is unfiltered, which basically covers that whole section, and that's for the white light. Those sensors give us interesting color points. So we have we can take that data, and this is for machine learning. I haven't done much of this yet, but it is in there. You can use the color temperature to work out what kind of lighting environment you are, whether you're under fluorescent lighting or gas emission lighting, LED lighting in front of TV screens. So there's quite a lot of data you can actually pull out just by looking at the color profiles in the data. And a very quick breakdown, it's just a microprocessor. You've got a standard battery in there, you've got an IC squared interface and a small block of memory. 64K is enough to record 1 sample a minute of the 4 colors for a week. Usually I do a 2-minute sample size. And so this was the first wearable version. It's a bit bulky, and it basically uses heat shrink wrapped in it. But I was wearing that for probably about a year while I was working on other bits and pieces as well. That was kind of like my test model I would hack on. That finally evolved into these guys. So this was a build of 6. They're still all handmade, hand-soldered things, and they take, well, the first one took about 4 hours to make one, just to solder one up. I got a bit quicker after that, and the cases were all 3D printed. That was the first batch that went out. Those went up to Aberdeen University. So I worked out you have to speed up. If you're making these things yourself, if you want to be at all efficient, you have to use manufactured PCBs and surface-mounted parts. So this was the first build for that, the circuit layout. This was the first batch that went off to Eindhoven University. So you've got the PCB layout there, and this is the first 60 that went out to them. And just the little demo is just testing the lights to make sure the LEDs are all hooked up correctly. It's very easy to put them in upside down, and that causes a lot of fun. The second one, so this is what I would probably call the current state, and so this is a Bluetooth enabled one rather than the wired cable one. So these are smaller round devices. They have a Bluetooth low energy module on them. It's called Bluetooth low energy. It's not. It's a lot lower energy than a Wi-Fi connection, but you still need to do a lot of power management, and that's currently where I keep getting tripped up. I'm hoping to do another push for these, so as we run into the next seasonal affective disorder season, so September, October, I'm hoping to push out a batch of Bluetooth ones. So if anybody is interested in being a tester for Bluetooth one, it will be an iOS app first, and an Android one is later. But if you've got an iOS phone that's capable of Bluetooth, then, and you're interested, let me know, and I can put you on the list. I'll just quickly skim through this. So there's lots of signals in there. Activity, because it has quite a narrow field of vision, as you move around, you're actually sampling different parts of the scene. So you get interesting frequency on the data, which you can analyze to know whether someone's moving or stationary. You can do things like see whether someone's consuming television or computer content, again, because of the light profile and the way it changes. Outdoor versus indoor is easy because it's just such a huge shift in brightness, and sunrise and sunset. There's various tagging and events you can do based on this data. Obviously also going to bed and getting up in the morning is easy to extract from this. Right, so data, what's it look like? So this is real data from a couple of years back. So each one of these is a day. So you've got a sunrise on the right, sunset on the left. If I zoom into that bottom one, so you have so a nice gentle start to the day, and then just before midday it gets quite bright, but you can see this patch that kind of goes off the scale. That's me being outside in direct sunlight. So you get this massive trigger, and it's measuring how much of that you have, and that's how it gives you your daily goal to make sure whether it can indicate then whether you've had enough or not enough of whatever light amount. If you have a small amount of light, then you get small increments to the goal. If there's a large enough amount of light, 10,000 lux or more, then you only actually need half an hour of that, so it can update your goal in real time. And then this is one that happened last year. So this was the lunar eclipse we had, solar eclipse that we had. The little dip you see, so this is, I've got loads of these on test, and they're sort of in my bedroom window and in the bathroom window and on the office and on the living room. Well, the one was on the fridge for about 6 months. This one happened to be sitting, and I'd completely forgotten about it at the time when we had the solar eclipse, the lunar eclipse. No, the solar eclipse, I got it right. So that little dip that's there is actually the moon covering the sun, because we had a relatively clear day then. And if you look at the, if I can get there, if you look at, if you turn that into real color, so this is the blue that it actually saw, you can see that it sort of desaturates, so you get this kind of gray stripe. So as the moon went across the sun, you actually lost the blueness in the sky at the same time, like a dusk effect. I wasn't quite sure whether it was going to show up, but I thought that was kind of cool. And then the last thing, there's a little movie which just shows a quick build. There is sound. I don't know whether it will play or not, but we'll see. Very quietly. Oh, there we go. It's just a quick run through of the build process. So hackathons do work. So again, I'd just like to thank New Media Scotland and Project Ginsberg, Centre of Design Informatics, the Scottish Government, NHS 24 and Creative Scotland. They were all involved in funding. And it's gone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary.